Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Go back. He looks, fires for the end zone. Intercepted. The 20, the 10, the 5. Touchdown. Matt Ware. Midfield. He's going to go. Deshaun Jackson. He steps up his head and falls forward. And he fumbles the football and the Eagles have it. It's gone. And the Eagles win.
It's all birds. All the time.
And welcome to another edition of the AATBirds Weekly Report. I'm myself, Johnny Ulecka, is joined as always by Chip at Chip for the Birds, and a special guest. We have Jon Marks joining us to talk Little Eagles. And I want to say thank you for joining us, because I know over the years with you at WIP, it was the big thing with the whole Ike Reese and AATBirds and always sharing the stuff, and you guys always kind of giving us some pub. So it's greatly appreciated. And I was happy to get you on to talk some birds.
Yeah, man, you give us free work. You were like producers for years. It was you're looking for Ike Reese drops. It's like, yeah, these guys are the best.
Listen, Johnny scours the internet for some of the darkest things in all of Eagles history. And I think he has these on rotation at this point.
I kind of do. Yeah, basically.
Well, good work by you.
Thank you. So I want to kind of get your feeling of this Eagles offseason. The draft is tomorrow, so it is happy draft eve, as Adam is saying in the chat here. And I kind of want to get your thoughts. What have you seen with the Eagles and the additions that they've made? Of course, some of them, pretty big decisions that, kind of off the grid, if you want to think of what they've done in recent years, getting a running back, paying a running back. There's some different things. I want to kind of get your feel of how Howie has built this team from the debacle of last year and how they collapse at the end of the year, and which is pretty, it's pretty scary. And then when you get reminded of it, like yesterday, I was driving behind a car, and literally the license plate had a couple of like weird letters in front of it, but it said 10-1, and it was just like oh boy. And you get that flashback, almost that PTSD from the season.
Yeah. Well, I think that Howie, at this point, heading into the offseason, he realizes that everything, and not that you don't have to improve your defense, because they have a lot of work they have to do overall on the team. They got to add talent. They're going to have to add some young talent on defense in the draft. Yep. But I think overall, and you saw this with them adding Saquon Barkley, I was surprised. I wasn't surprised that they added Saquon Barkley. I was surprised that they were as aggressive in going out and paying top of the market price for Saquon Barkley. Not that it was a backbreaker or anything like that. It's a short-term contract. It's more or less a 2-year contract. But the fact that it was in their head, hey, there's other teams that are interested, and we're not looking to get it at a great value. You know how Howie Roseman can kind of be like, all right, you wait a day or two, these guys aren't getting what they want, and that's when I jump in and I get them at kind of a reduced price. He didn't do that here. So you can tell that they are focused on getting the Jalen Hurts back that we saw in 2022. And I'll even say for the first third or half of the season last year. And I think you do that with really being a run-oriented team. And I'm not talking about the quarterback running the ball. I don't need Jalen Hurts running the ball 12, 15 times a game. So you're bringing in an offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore that really wants to run the ball. He's fine with running the ball. And that's the way you're going to get the most effective Jalen Hurts, is when he's not back there in the pocket. He's not back there absorbing hits. He's not tempted to go out there and make big plays. Last year, they tried to make it the Jalen Hurts show. Hey, Jalen, save us. And there just was a lot going on. He wasn't protected. He was seeing ghosts back there. So it's a long way, guys, of saying that the Eagles, there's no step back season. There's no neutral season with this team, nor should there be. They're in the window right here. But getting Jalen Hurts back, we can talk about defense. We can talk about corners. We can talk about linebackers. They need to get the Jalen Hurts that we saw in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, because if you have that guy, you can beat anybody.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of really important things. I mean, and I know from doing shows on this network, my biggest complaint last year was Jalen Hurts was expected to be 150% of the offense, and even with all the weapons that he has. So one of the things that I want to kind of get your mindset on is, look, the way I judge an offseason is the team better than when the season ended? You look at some of the players that we lost, and they are huge foundational pieces. And I'm thinking primarily in the terms of, Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox as far as leadership goes. Has this team gotten better than they were at the end of last season?
I'll say yes, just because you have a different offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think that's good.
If you would have came back with Brian Johnson and Sirianni, would say we're never going to do, obviously. But even if you kept the personnel the same and adding Barkley, he's got to stay healthy. We know that, but adding Barkley and adding a new offensive coordinator, this offense could look totally different. We've seen it. You have bad play calling and you have bad offensive coaching. And that's what you saw. I saw that. And I also saw, and this is where I'll put the blame on Jalen, but I give him a mulligan because of the coaching.
Yeah.
And he's, we really have no other choice anyway, but was that, he was not a confident passer in the second half of the season. He was spooked, was not comfortable in the pocket. He was sensing pressure that wasn't there. He was rolling. He was moving.
Everything was a roll.
Yeah. He did not. And it's amazing because I didn't think he could develop into the quarterback we saw in the Super Bowl. He outplayed Pat Mahomes. He was throwing the deep ball really that whole season. I won't just leave it up to one game, but he developed his game as a quarterback, passing the ball. He doesn't have to have Josh Allen arm strength. He doesn't have to have Aaron Rodgers flick of the wrist, but that dude could make every throw. He was making deep balls. He was dynamic with the playmaking he was able to do. And then last year, you didn't see that at all in the second half of the season with the passing. So he was spooked. It was a bad offense. It was bad play calling. They need to get Jalen back to being the comfortable Jalen that could move around in the pocket very well. He had a knack for kind of sliding a little bit and staying in there and making throws. There was no pocket awareness with Jalen Hurts, especially the second half of the season. Got to get back to that.
Johnny, before you ask a question, I know a lot of the talking was about getting rid of Nick Sirianni because of such the fall off from the season. And you mentioned the fact that if they get rid of Brian Johnson, they replace all the coordinators, they do all the things they have to do. Was it, in your mind, very similar to, if you remember, Doug Peterson had a big fall off year and said, I'm running it back with everybody. Was Sirianni, in your mind, kind of along the same lines of danger of, if he's like, I'm going to double down and take Brian Johnson, then Sirianni would have been gone?
I think yes. It's a great observation, and it's something that I've talked about. To me, Doug Peterson was burnt out from being here. If you think about it, he won the Super Bowl, right? You had the whole thing with Carson Wentz that was going on. Him in the front office, obviously there was friction. Doug wanted more power. Doug didn't want Howie. They're hiring his coaches. He's pissed about that. They're firing his coaches. He's pissed about that. To me, it felt like that Doug was so burnt out that he didn't even fight for his job. He was like, you know what? I'd almost rather not be here. And if you remember, I don't know if it was during the season or it was in that training camp, there was talk that was put out there, and I'm telling you, it probably came from his agent, that said he's okay with not being here next year. I think it was during the year when they were really crapping out. And I think he was burnt out. He didn't fight for his job. If you remember, his plan was make Matt Burke his defensive coordinator, and I don't remember who did he want to keep Grow, or was it Press Taylor? It was Press Taylor.
He walked into the meeting at the end of the season and said, Press Taylor is still my guy. And Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman said, then neither of you are our guys. Goodbye.
And what do you think Nick Sirianni said when they said you need to fire him and fire him?
I would imagine that if you think back to his early press conference, he said, Howie builds the team and I just execute the plays. And
he fought for his job. Because it was,
I think so.
It was as shitty the second half of last year as it was Doug's year. It was the quarter. I mean, except Carson Wentz sucked the whole year, and Jalen only got bad kind of for half of the season because he was magnificent the first, or 10-1 for crying out loud.
Right.
But it got that bad. So to me, Sirianni is fighting for his job. Sirianni also, like, the one thing about Doug, because he didn't have a ton of experience in the NFL. Sirianni had been to a couple places. He was in a couple organizations. So when you're working as a positional coach or a lower level coach, guys that you're coaching with, other position coaches, other young coaches, you guys become friends and you network. Right. So then know, like, hey, listen, when I become a head coach, Jonathan Gannon was the guy that he brought in. So Doug didn't have any idea. He just wanted to promote a guy on the defensive staff, and he wanted to keep Press Taylor. Where Sirianni does, so they made a good move with Fangio. You still need personnel, but they made a good move with Fangio. And the fact that he was okay with, he's an offensive head coach. He said his offense has been stripped from him. He might as well be a defensive coach at this point. Right. So the fact that he says, I'm okay with that, and whatever's going on, Nick Sirianni's okay with that to keep his job. And that's not something, because Doug was an NFL quarterback for a long time and won a Super Bowl. Doug wasn't getting treated like that. And I think Nick Sirianni's like, hey, I'm not getting another job, so I better try to keep this one.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because you look at Jacksonville and Doug Peterson, Press Taylor's their offensive coordinator. So
that was my point, right?
I don't know what kind of dirt he has to be able to keep getting that, but listen,
and they suck.
Yeah,
offensively,
it's funny because I had somebody mention to me, an older Eagles fan, mention to me. It's like when Press Taylor. It's like Press Taylor is like what Dana Bible was back in '98 with Ray Rhodes, and he stunk. And it's just, you look at what the Eagles did with Kellen Moore, and then the quarterbacks coach Doug Nussmeier, who has a very good track record. He made Dak Prescott into the quarterback.
Yeah, good point.
And listen, we can hate Dak all we want because he's a cowboy, everything. He is a good quarterback. He is a very good quarterback. And listen, if you're able to do what they did with Dak, with Jalen, to get him more refined as a passer and better as a passer, I'm all for that. Everyone would say that they're all for that. But I think what you really have to look at, and when you look at Kellen Moore's offense and the way, and with Saquon Barkley, them adding Saquon, the way they use the running back position, the way they use the third receiver, the way they do a lot of different things that the Eagles didn't do last year. Like Quez Watkins was your third receiver, but really he was just the guy that would just run down the field. Honestly, you really had no type of confidence in him doing much of anything. And if he did catch the ball, who knows if he would have fumbled it or whatever it may be.
Or if he would even catch it, right.
Yeah, and you look at the other thing was with Kellen Moore is they use two tight ends. They will use two tight end sets, and that's going to be, I know they picked up a veteran last week. They may draft, a tight end higher in the draft. I like the outlook of what Kellen Moore brings to this team, and I think it's going to help the offense. And Brian Johnson being friends with Jalen Hurts, knowing him his whole life, maybe that was a detriment to kind of Jalen, is having a guy that knows you so well, and it's really not that tough coaching that maybe somebody like him, needs. Everybody needs sometimes some tough coaching.
Yeah, so John DeFilippo, if you remember, quarterback's coach when they won the Super Bowl, but he didn't work for Carson Wentz. He was a long-time NFL assistant coach. So when he looked at Carson Wentz, he was like I'm your coach. It's my job to nitpick you and to do this and do that. Yeah. Carson didn't like that. Carson liked Frank Reich, who didn't really say anything to him, and him and DeFilippo didn't get along. So DeFilippo goes. Now Press Taylor comes in. Press Taylor works for Carson Wentz. Yeah. Press Taylor's not, no pun intended, pressing Carson Wentz or maybe getting dirty with the details and saying like, hey, and what did you see? You saw his play regress.
You saw a big drop off. Yeah.
It was over at that point. So I don't know if Jalen Hurts needs that like Carson Wentz, but to your point, whatever they were doing last year wasn't working, and bringing in a veteran quarterback coach who will have more trust, that Jalen should have more trust in. And then just Kellen Moore, who, if more than anything, the biggest thing I could like with the play calling, we can talk about the actual plays, but it seemed like that they were just putting plays out there. There was no rhyme or reason. Yes. It wasn't setting anything up. It was like, oh, that worked. Let's try that play again. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not, but that can't be your only go-to. They have, by the end of the season, it was embarrassing how spooked everybody on that offense was.
You could see that there was no cohesion between the team. And again, I think like you saw it at the end of like Andy Reid's days, and you saw it the whole time Peterson was here, but you saw a very predictable offense. You knew what was going to be run every which way. So it's draft eve. We're 24 hours from the Eagles maybe making a pick. Who knows? That we know that Howie likes to do all kinds of goofy stuff. Where do you see this team's biggest weaknesses still?
And
can they be fixed in the draft?
So, I mean, really, I think everybody, if you ask an average Eagle fan, they would probably, let's say, cornerback at this point, just because you look at Slay and you probably don't like Slay. You look at Bradbury, you're like, oh, I don't like Bradbury. And there's nobody younger in the pipeline that you at least say he's our guy. Maybe one of these younger guys does develop, and I'm not saying that they can't, but it doesn't seem like there's a young guy. I actually so for this year, because I still see the window open, I honestly look at edge rusher and offensive line.
Okay.
And it's not a sexy pick, but an edge rusher could be. So you're sitting at 22. And I don't know if you guys have seen this stat, and I can try to find it on my phone real fast. But when Howie Roseman, when he picks, let me just see here, 22. When he picks 22nd overall or in that range, they are not good. And I just lost it. But anyway, so if you look at it, Rager was in that range. Marcus Smith was there.
Danny Watkins.
We covered this last week, and we went through some of these names. And it was just a who's who of how the hell did this happen?
Right. And it makes sense, right? Like Howie Roseman isn't known for being a great talent evaluator in the draft. He's not plucking necessarily, not that he hasn't, but he's not looked at as being like a scout type general manager. He's a wheeler and a dealer. He knows value. He makes moves. He's a fantastic general manager. So that's why when you're picking higher, obviously it becomes a little bit easier to make the picks. But down there in the 20s, is it a matter that you're going for a solid player or are you taking swings for the fences? And Nelson Aguilar, who is right there, like that was a pretty good pick. But the misses they've had in the 20s, the guys they've missed on. So, I heard Daniel Jeremiah say today that there's a 0%
Dillard too, right? He was 21, I think.
Dillard was there. He sucked. Honestly, Nelson Aguilar was the best player in that range that they drafted. Rager wasn't. Watkins wasn't. So I say all that to say, I would be surprised if they picked at 22. If they move up, they're going to move up. If they don't, I could see them taking a corner if they move back. I could see them taking an edge or maybe an offensive lineman if they move up. If they stay put, they could see an offensive lineman that slid to him. A lot of times Howie doesn't like to wait for an offensive lineman or somebody that he values to slide. He'll try to move up a couple spots. So I think it's edge rusher, offensive line in the first round. Maybe you use one of those second round draft picks to move around and move up in the first round. And I think you'll see a corner day too. But I mean, it could be in the first round. I'd be surprised. But offensive line, edge rusher. Does it solve it? I mean, they need pass rush. I don't know if Bryce Huff is going to be a double-digit sack guy again this year. They're losing Reddick, who has been their best defensive player the last 2 years.
I want to ask you about that before we kind of shift away from this. Is losing Hassan Reddick, that's going to be a problem, right? It's not just me.
Yeah, of course it could. He was your best defensive player, and you don't bring him back because he's mad about his contract. And honestly, they very easily could have just said, listen, Hassan, we understand, but this is part of business.
Right.
And you'll be a pro and you'll come in and you don't have to be happy about it, but you're making, you made money. It's been a great contract for the Eagles, and you let him play out his contract. He leaves for free agency. You get a 3rd round comp pick or whatever. And the Eagles decided they would rather you get Huff, get him signed for 3 years. And now you don't have to worry about having a comp pick at the end of the 3rd round. You may get a 2nd round draft pick. It could be a 3rd round draft pick, but does it make you better? No, certainly not on paper. But what Howie Roseman didn't want to do, and this is clear, he didn't want to extend Hassan Reddick because he didn't want to extend a player in his early 30s. He wanted to get younger at the position. So this is the biggest gamble that Howie Roseman's made is he got rid of Hassan Reddick, and he's saying Bryce Huff is going to be my best pass rusher. And if that doesn't work out, and Hassan Reddick goes up to New York and has 12, 13, 14 sacks, Howie's going to hear a lot of shit. There's going to be calls for him to be fired, which won't happen, but still.
No.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look at that, and of course, the whole contract thing with Hassan, of course, then they go and they, Dickerson's extended, you have Devontae's extended, they give these big money deals. It's interesting because today, if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, Trey Hendrickson, who's 29 years old, same age as Hassan, making $15 million this year.
Yep.
He, requested to be traded, asked to be traded. So that's another interesting because he wants more money. But again, that's also interesting. But I think you make a great point when you talk about, listen, when you look at the Eagles and Howie Roseman and what they do, yes, corner would be nice if you're able to trade up and get one of the top guys. But that's really not what the Eagles do. Eagles do is they emphasize the offensive defensive lines.
Yeah, they always do.
Yep.
If they're able to trade up and get one of these offensive linemen. Now, to me, when you look at the offensive lineman, you don't want to draft a guy that can only play tackle and have to sit behind Lane. It would be Lane because Mailata just got extended as well. Behind Lane for 2 years, depending on how long he's going to play. And it's a waste of a pick. You want a guy that could essentially play tackle, but would be able to slide right in the right guard, and be able to hit that spot. Or like you mentioned, edge rusher, the kid from UCLA, I really like.
Yep.
Latu, his name is. There is a medical thing with his neck, everything. If that is cleared by their doctors and good to go, and I saw somebody, I forget who it was, made the comp today who was it? I think it was Greg Cosell. I think it may have been him, but it was talking about Latu and how he reminds him of like when TJ Watt was coming out of Wisconsin. And he's got the makeup and everything. And he's one of the best, most refined pass rushers. I think he would fit great, slide him right in, kind of, a young player to be able to, fill that role of Hassan Reddick. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do because the Eagles, like you said, don't like to sit still. Howie has something on his mind, whether he moves up or moves back and maybe collects a couple picks to be able to maneuver because this whole tampering thing with Saquon, are they going to lose picks next year? What's going to go on with that?
I forgot about that.
That's a whole nother thing because they said it's not going to be done this week. So you're looking at next year's picks when you only have a 1, 2, 3, and a 5 and 2 7s. You don't have as many picks. So that's going to be interesting. But the draft's a crapshoot. It's just what it is. You never know what it's going to be. That's why I love about the draft. It's a roll of the dice. If you hit, hey, great. Sometimes you get snake eyes.
Yep.
But which we've seen that a lot in this range, like you mentioned, John. But
I want to touch on this. Yeah. So T's filling up with some great comments here. And he says, John, at this point, most people have their guys that they want. So we're going to use our imagination. And you are Howie Roseman tomorrow. Do you have a specific player that you say, let's go for?
Yeah, I think you mentioned him. I see. Here's the issue that I have because when you look around at the mock drafts, you'll see a lot to who we just talked about. Who he would probably be a top 15, top 12 pick if the medicals that people are worried about the medicals. Now, you'll see some guys have him in the teens. Other guys have them picking closer to the end of the first round. Hell, we've seen players like this fall to the second round. Remember our linebacker that we thought was going to be a first round or a second round pick. He slid to the third round, blanking on his name because he sucks. And
Davion Taylor?
No, from Georgia.
Nakobe Dean.
Oh, Nakobe Dean. Yeah.
I was like, he's going to take him in the first round. He was there in the third round, and we know why. He sucked. And
he has not done much yet.
No, and LS, I hope that he does. If you're waiting for nobody's thought about the Kobe Dean year this year as far as an answer at linebacker. I hope he does, and if he does, he does. But I don't like. I'd be sitting here and saying I like. It's sexy to talk about. I want this wide receiver, or I want this skilled guy, that guy.
Brock Bowers, the tight end.
Yeah, exactly.
We get the whole show on him.
Let's talk ourselves in the Bowers. That'd be awesome. But And Johnny, I think you said it, that there's not the players that you see that are just strictly tackles right? Like they are the highest linemen that are taken because they look at them and they say, there's my left tackle for the next 10 years. There's my right tackle for the next 10 years. What you're seeing a lot now these days is you're getting a guy that played tackle in college that is looked at like the Eagles will look at him and say, hey, you're going to play guard for a couple of years. And then when Lane Johnson retires, you are a right tackle. So he's there in training. If something happens to Lane and he gets injured, which has happened, then he slides out there. Because if you look at the Eagles' offensive line, they don't have a ton of depth and they don't have a ton of versatility. So
no, they lost Jack Driscoll. I mean,
I know he was their one guy,
and he was one of those swing guys,
right? So I think that the Eagles really crave a high upside. We'll start him as a guard. He'll end up being our tackle of the future. I don't know when Lane Johnson retires. With him and the anxiety problems, could he just play another year or two and decide I don't want to play anymore? Yeah, sure.
Buddies.
I'd still be surprised if he didn't play another 3 or 4 seasons. He's almost making quarterback money. Tackles are best tackle in football. He's making a ton of money. So, I mean, I guess we'll see, but they'll be prepared for it. And that's another reason why. Like, it just scares me to have that kind of depth on the offensive line. You get 2 injuries, forget about 1 injury. You get 2 guys that go down, you're fucked.
Your season's done.
No, I mean, you can't have Jalen Hurts then seeing ghosts because he's worried about the pass rush that isn't there because it's been there before. So I would be very happy with an offensive lineman in the first round.
One question that I've asked everybody for the past couple months, and I want to hear your answer on it too, is it seems every single year the Eagles get their heart set, or I shouldn't say the Eagles fans get their heart set on a player. It was Marcus Mariota, it was Justin Jefferson, and then there's just such a disappointment when the Eagles don't get this player.
Right.
And my question for you is kind of the homer pick of it all. Is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. that guy this year? Is the draft a failure in Eagles fans' minds if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is not an Eagle by the end of this weekend?
I mean, it's not for me. I was looking up. I was trying to see where he was in a lot of these mock drafts, where he goes, and
there's a lot of similarities to Nakobe Dean. That's the problem.
It's few and far. Like you have to find a full 7-round mock draft. I was looking at a mock draft today. He's a 4th or a 5th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he went from being, hey, maybe he'll be there at the end of the first round, to being a 2nd rounder, to being a 3rd rounder. So what does that tell me? It tells me that when teams, pro days, individual workouts, whatever the reason is, they don't view him the same way that maybe a lot of people viewed him coming out of Clemson. Doesn't mean he still can't be a good player, but the value of a true 4-3 linebacker, essentially, which is what he is, he's not an edge rusher, isn't what it once was. Like Jeremiah. I remember Jeremiah being drafted, and he was either the first pick or the 2nd pick of the 3rd round, and he barely played his first year. Yeah. I remember he's inactive almost the entire year. And then, that's the reason why the Eagles drafted Barry Gardner. They weren't buying Trotter, or they had questions about Trotter. So Trotter comes out that 2nd year and he kills it. And you're like, wow, this guy's really good. I don't see that kind of player in Trot Jr. Now,
right.
He's going to get drafted, and he's probably a reserve at a special team or at first, but no, I'm not going to go crazy if they don't do Trot Jr. No.
But are Eagles fans going to? Potentially.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. We're willing to do anything, but the overall point, and hopefully this is something Vic Fangio has already gotten through to Howie Roseman. Like, yo, Holmes, we got to get better players at linebacker.
Yes.
I get it. You want to play 2 linebackers and 5 defensive back most of the time, fine. But having a playmaking linebacker that can get tackles for losses, get in the backfield to disrupt running plays, or like really can do it all, and in coverage, go out there and use a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick and actually get a player that can play. And maybe Trot's that guy, but they have to improve the linebacker.
You saw that in most of the playoff teams that went pretty deep, as they had a dominant linebacker.
Took the words out of my mouth. And by the way, watching the Ravens and Hamilton play, and he slid and he kept sliding. That dude, he shouldn't be that fast for being that big.
No.
And I mean, blitzing the quarterback, pass protection. Like, yeah, I know the league doesn't value safeties like they once did. Well, how about you start valuing a player like that? Because if he was on the Eagles, man, like that's somebody you have to worry about on this defense. And I don't know who you worry about on this defense right now. I don't think anybody.
No, you don't. You need to add some youth, add some quality players for Vic Fangio, but it's going to be a building block there with the defense, and hopefully the offense is the 2022 version so they can score some points. So it's not super emphasis on just your defense, but we'll see. John, I want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll have to get you again before the start of the season, kind of break down the Eagles again, but really appreciate you joining us and taking your time to talk some birds with us.
Yeah, of course. I just want to add one more thing about the draft.
Yeah.
I need a running back. And
the room is shallow.
They can draft him in the 10th round or the 5th round or the 3rd round. They don't have a 3rd round pick yet. But like if you're going to put this much emphasis on, hey, this is why we need Saquon Barkley, and it's pretty evident that they think that's going to get the best out of Jalen Hurts. If he goes down, which he's been known to do, I don't need to see Gainwell in there and Boston Scott. All right. So like go out there and can the Eagles be one of the teams like everybody else that could draft in the late rounds a running back that produces?
It'd be a lot cooler if they were.
So go get a running back in case something happens with Saquon. And if Saquon's gone in 3 years, you have a guy that steps right in and he's your player. So just want to end in that. I would love a wide receiver too. It'd be nice to have a 3rd wide receiver. So, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I agree. You got to go out there and get a running back.
Yeah, yep. I agree.
I'm on the Marshawn Lloyd from USC train, which you probably
everybody
get around,
seems to be on that.
Maybe around the 4th round. I really like him, so that'd be definitely somebody I'd love to snag. And because Gainwell is a free agent after this year,
and we're not re-signing Boston Scott.
His number was given away.
But if what was the number given out? Really?
Yes, it was.
Wow,
we got some guy off the 49ers darkest practice squad, and now he's an Eagle wearing Boston Scott's number.
So after the draft, then you'll see teams that don't get a running back. They'll be like, all right, we'll bring in Boston Scott for $1 million or something like that. And the Eagles could end up bringing in a running back if they don't draft the guy, which is possible. But
the Giants are going to take Boston Scott, so they won't play against him 2 times a year.
I would try to shove it up the Eagles' nose. Yeah, hell yeah. Give them $1 million and just say, hey, just play 2 games a year against the Eagles. They didn't want you anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, listen, thanks.
John, thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Good to finally get on with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Some good stuff.
I love talking with him. Like I like that there are times when we talk to guests and you could tell that they're, writers and their media guy, and they try to keep it a little more, I don't want to say PC, but they try and keep it a little more palatable where he's like, no, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah, this is what he feels and everything. I love it. I do want to touch on a couple of these comments. They're coming in big time.
Great comments.
Fans of the safeties of the draft, who do you like? I like Newman from Minnesota. I like him a lot. There's a guy from Air Force, Taylor. To me, there's when I take a look at the safety position, I do think they need to get somebody. If they don't get corner early, they have to get safety early. I would like to get a veteran too, like a Justin Simmons. I'd love to have that. But they really need to address that position because Reed Blankenship, they did extend him an extra season. Sidney Brown is coming off the ACL injury. You do have Sidney Gardner-Johnson, but the thing with Gardner-Johnson is I think he's gonna play safety, but he's gonna come down. He's gonna do a multitude of things for this defense. Yeah. Listen, he's going to be your playmaker, and it's what they need. They missed that last year, and we mentioned that and talked about
turnovers. We just did not get turnovers last year.
And hey, I do want to, since we're on the subject of the secondary, I do want to bring up Isaiah Rodgers was reinstated by the NFL, which is good depth to have.
Johnny, do you know why it took a couple extra days?
I don't know. I think
that was confusing me. We were all panicking when they reinstated the 5 guys. We're like, oh, so no Isaiah Rodgers, and then a couple days later, it's like. And Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah, listen, it's just, it is what it is. It was a little concerning, like, oh, wait a minute, but there's still enough time. He's 26 years old. He played a lot of outside corner. I know his frame kind of tells you more inside slot corner, but I think he is an outside corner. Let's see what they do.
That makes a lot of sense, T. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely could be the reasoning. But listen, we've talked about him on a couple of shows, but it's good to have him finally reinstated. He can be at the facility when they have all the programs and everything. He is now eligible to be with the team doing all that stuff. So that's great. Again, he was off a year, so it may take some time to kind of get himself acclimated and stuff. Don't expect him to come in and be exactly who he was with the Colts. It may take a little bit of time. So people have to kind of, pump the brakes on that. But listen,
Eagles fans pumping the brakes.
Pump the brakes. But no, having Rodgers is great depth, a 26-year-old to be able to have in that room. I know you have Ringo. I know you have Ricks. I know you have some of these other younger guys in the room, but I still think a cornerback is definitely a need for this team, especially
I'm
in the draft.
telling you, we talked about it last week when you and Bowers did your mock draft, and Cooper DeJean was sitting right there, and neither of you guys took him. And I know there's a lot of talk about this kid from Toledo, the Eagles moving up and getting him.
Quinyon Mitchell.
Is he even? Where is he projected to go? Is he projected to go top 15?
Yeah.
Okay. You know that I don't follow the draft as extensively as you do. So
I saw there were some people that were talking about it, in that 12 to 15 range. And the Eagles.
Is he worth a trade up?
Well, yeah. When I know the cornerback class, there's a number of names. Quinyon Mitchell. You have Terrion Arnold from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, I would think in the 20s, you have, of course, Cooper DeJean, you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, you have some players there. So to me, looking at it, I am okay. Like, I wouldn't mind an edge rusher or an offensive lineman, like John was talking about.
Yeah.
I don't mind that at all. But if they're able to trade up and they say they go for either a Quinyon Mitchell or a Terrion Arnold, I am okay with that as well. I like both of those players. And I think both of those players fit well in the Fangio scheme. So for me, I would not push back on those guys. My thing is, if they the biggest thing with it, if they trade up for a wide receiver, I almost said no, a corner. Well, we'll get into that next one. A corner, either Mitchell or Arnold. Then what does that say for Bradbury? Do they then go ahead and get rid of him? If they don't get the corner early and they go earlier than expected, and then they get a corner in the second or third, well, if they get a third round, in the second round or the fourth round, they get a corner. Do they then push back on Bradbury, keep him there because he's still under contract? They don't want to, lose another player, another veteran, even though he struggled. Give him the opportunity to play under Fangio. It's going to be interesting.
I hear what you're saying about Bradbury. I don't care. I don't care if it hurts Bradbury's feelings if we draft a corner high up and he starts getting worried about his job. Bradbury was atrocious. And I think that the only reason why he was kept around was because he was kept around. I don't think that was like a decision that was made out of a need to keep James Bradbury. And I think that he could be a cut somewhere along the line, especially if they do go up and they draft somebody that is of high quality. So yes, I could see them building along the lines. Yes, I could see them going and getting a corner. I am kind of locking in a little bit on that Cooper DeJean. If they don't trade, if they trade the pick, whether it's up or down, I'd see it not being Cooper DeJean. But if they're going to stick at 22, I think it could be Cooper DeJean. And yeah, Bradbury is here because of money. That's 100%. That is 100% the reason. And
listen, don't be surprised if a player like Cooper DeJean goes to the Indianapolis Colts.
You think?
Indianapolis needs some corner depth. To me, I think he could fit there. But we had Cool Hand Luke
Love that.
chiming in here. Wide receiver potentially in the first round. Now, Dan Graziano put out something how the Eagles could be trading up looking for a receiver. And then he kind of went back and talked about Brock Bowers. We talked about the whole Brock Bowers situation.
Right before they signed CJ Uzma.
Yeah. Listen, do they think, hey, let's go up and get that? I don't know. The one thing that I heard, somebody put some stats out about tight ends in the first round recently.
Uh-huh.
And
I mean, Kyle Pitts has turned into a nothing.
Yeah, like
unfortunately, and I think that's partly the offense around him.
Yeah, probably how you're used. I get that.
I think this could end up being a breakout year for Pitts. I think with now a quarterback and coordinators, I think this could be the year that he finally turns in. But he was expected to be just a figure.
Yeah, but that's the only thing that kind of scares me a little bit when you look at like a player like Bowers he's the top tight end in the draft by far. He's
Not
one of the
even close.
best playmakers in the draft, offensive playmakers in the draft. Even looking at the receivers that are on there, the Neighbors, the Odunzes, I think Harrison Jr. is ahead of him, but I think he is right there with those guys in terms of his offensive ability. It would be interesting. It would, to me, I think that would throw some shockwaves if they were to trade up for Bowers. To me, that would be.
How high would they have to go? Where do you see Bowers going? Because I see him going in the top 8 picks.
If he doesn't go to the Jets, if the Jets don't take him at 10, if the receivers are off the board already and the Jets don't take him at 10, then he could slide potentially to the Colts, like T mentioned in the chat. And if he gets past the Colts, I think a team like the Cincinnati Bengals could take him because the Cincinnati Bengals,
they need weapons. They absolutely need weapons.
T. Higgins, of course, has his trade request as well, since there is no traction on his contract. And it's going to be interesting to see where Bowers goes. But it is a really toss-up. And when you get so close, like tomorrow, you have all the smoke coming out, all these teams, who wants to go where, who's teams that are looking to trade. The Patriots, do they want to trade out of 3? Do the Cardinals want to trade out of 4? There's so many different things. To me, it's great because it puts out, if there's a bunch of trades in the first round, all this type of, not everything is set how people think it's going to go.
Oh yeah.
That's what makes it all fun, in my opinion.
So speaking about Bowers, Dylan checking in. I think it'd be a mistake for Philly to take Bowers. Can't think of one pair beyond Gronk Hernandez that has panned out. I mean, what I've said recently, especially about Bowers,
well, Goddard Ertz wasn't bad,
right? The Eagles typically do have a tight end in waiting for a couple of years, so they go with a 2 tight end system. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if you did see him. Cool hand, Luke. We've talked about Jeremiah Trotter a lot in this draft and leading up to the draft. I definitely want him.
Listen, if he winds up slipping, say he slips out of the second round,
it's a great story.
I would go up and I'd get him, even if you have drafted a linebacker, and it doesn't hurt to get linebackers. But we'll see how they address that. But
what worries me about Jeremiah Trotter is there's a lot of similarities to Nakobe Dean. We already have a ineffective Nakobe Dean, so I'd rather not have 2 ineffective Nakobe Deans.
We'll see. To me, I think they're different players in terms of their game. I know the size aspect is a little bit of similarity, and a lot of people can kind of put that. But it's funny when you look at the Baltimore Ravens linebackers, Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. They're not the biggest guys.
They don't need to be. They're playmakers.
The one thing with Trotter Jr., I think that kind of threw off a lot of like his projection is he didn't run at the combine. He didn't do a lot of the drills. His pro day was a lot later. Then he was supposed to run a lot later. I'm not sure if he even ran and timed his 40. So there's a lot of question marks there. And maybe that is throwing his draft stock down a little bit. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, look, I know a couple of the big names, especially when it comes to the local feel-good story stuff. I am not the biggest draft junkie. I leave that to my partner in crime, Johnny here. But the Eagles, because of the fall off that they had last year, the Eagles really do need to hit on a couple of these picks to be playmakers this season. And you need a couple of the playmakers that you've picked in recent drafts to step up and kind of like this needs to be in a Nakobe Dean year, or it's time to move on. I am a big believer in letting players develop and things like that, but you need Nakobe Dean because you got rid of, or you let players walk to allow Nakobe Dean to be the guy. And because he hasn't been the guy, you saw a massive drop off. I need Nakobe Dean to be the guy this year.
Yeah, no, it would be good to see him take that step because you want to see that. Listen, when you look at the draft and the Eagles, you want to kind of get some production. Like Jalen Carter had great production and of course fell off a little bit, but you need at least a little punch of production. I'm not saying the guy needs to be a star in year one.
You need pressure so you can get turnovers.
You need some adequate play. You need some guys that are seeing the growth as the season goes on. To me, that's the key, is you want to see the growth as the season goes on. And the Eagles do have a lot of questions when you look at the players who were recently drafted. You look at Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis needs to.
He needs, especially because Fletcher Cox retired. Like, there has to be the step up there to fill the spot.
You need him to be what you draft him to be, that run stuffer, that guy that it's just, he's got to watch his weight. You got to make sure that everything is on point with him. And you knew that was going to happen when you drafted him. You knew that was the case. Dean, hopefully he gives you something. I'm interested to see what you can get out of Ricks and Ringo. I'm not saying these guys are going to be stars, but if they give you quality play and they'll give you depth, that's great. Sidney Brown coming off the injury. Let's see what he can give you. Tyler Steen, you drafted him. He was a tackle at Alabama and Vanderbilt before that. And you had him playing guard. And then what is his role going to be? Is he going to be the right guard? Is he going to battle with a draft pick? If you draft someone in the first round, is he going to be in competition for that right guard spot? Is he going to be your swing tackle? There's a lot of questions that we're going to see, start to be answered as the offseason keeps going into the summer months here, and you start to get OTAs and you get mini camps and you get training camp in the preseason, which I'm all for it because I love it. I love every aspect of roster building, the offseason, drafting, practices, all that stuff is great. And that's why, to me, the NFL is an all year round type of thing, is because of that. All these different things, next month is what? The schedule release. So then you have that. And then, you start to get.
Then we're off and running, man.
And then you start to get a little bit of the slower months, which I have stuff planned for that keeps the conversation going. But to me, they've designed it great. Every month they have something for agency, then the draft, then the schedule release. And then you start getting into mini camps and stuff. And then it's just, like you said, you're rolling then. Yeah. So
I think I also want to bring up real quick. And again, the comments that are rolling in, guys, we fantastic. Please we do this every Wednesday night. Feel free to join us. I got to give Howie Roseman credit. And we mentioned this last week after the Devontae Smith extension. How Howie likes to set the market. And he sets the market for a player that is maybe not the number one at his position in the league, so that whatever the market is, that it's only going to grow. You saw it with when he signed Jalen Hurts early, and then you saw Lamar Jackson get the bigger deal. Yeah. Devontae Smith gets a deal that still allows the Eagles to do what they need to do. Mm-hmm. And then you saw the deal that Amon-Ra St. Brown signed today, which is so much larger than the Devontae Smith deal, which means the CeeDee Lamb extension will be even bigger. It means the Justin Jefferson extension will be even bigger. It'll be the Jamar Chase extension will be big. And they have locked in Devontae Smith at a team-friendly, player-friendly price because of when they decided to do the deal. It is brilliant by Howie Roseman. He continues to master the cap.
But Chip, you also have to look at this though. A player like Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
He wants the deal. What's going to happen with him, especially on draft night? Is he going to get traded on draft night and then sign an extension? I don't know what's going to happen there. You look at a player like T. Higgins. He wants his deal. There's guys, you talked about the upper echelon guys. There's guys right below them, right in that range of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devontae and the Brandon Ayuks and the T. Higgins that are going to want deals. So the Eagles always get ahead, and it's great.
It's brilliant.
And the Lions also signed Penei Sewell, their left tackle.
Right, and again.
The right tackle. Yeah, because Decker's their left tackle. So they signed their right tackle to a monster, massive deal. He's the highest paid offensive tackle right now, $28 million, average. So listen, that's a heck of a deal.
I agree with this. The Devontae deal is for a 1B. I get it. The Huff contract. Ugh. I understand. The Huff contract, to me, is a very obvious attempt of trying to spend the money that they were going to be willing to spend on Hassan Reddick on somebody that wasn't 30 years old.
Listen, the Huff contract, I guess you can kind of pin it to when they signed Hassan. I know Hassan was coming off of back-to-back double-digit sack campaigns, not just one double-digit sack campaign.
Right.
But they're hoping that this type of deal is what you got from Hassan and that double-digit sacks for the next couple of years and able to contribute and able to give you that type of explosive pass rush.
It has to be.
And hopefully it goes well that the last defensive end that you got from the Jets and Hugh Douglas. So let's see how he plays. Let's see how it goes. I've always liked him. I think he's that, his motor never stops. He's a player that wants to keep getting better. He a lot of Trent Cole in him. So, if he has that type of production, I'm all for it. But, T had this other question too. Do we believe in Milton? I think Milton is an underrated player on that defensive line. I don't think he got, and we saw it. He didn't get a lot of snaps. Like, listen, he's playing, you draft Jalen Carter, you have Fletcher Cox already there. You have Jordan Davis. He wasn't getting as much play. He's going to play a lot more this year. And, he's playing for a contract. He's up after this year. If he starts to play really well at the beginning of the year, don't be surprised if you don't see the Eagles extend him as well. Keep him in the fold. And listen, I like what Milton Williams brings. I know a lot of people.
I hope he's going to step up too.
But I know a lot of people like to give the video when they drafted him and how he's going down the line shaking hands, and then at the very end, I think it was Tom Donahoe didn't shake his hand, was upset because they didn't pick Aleem McNeil, who went to the Detroit Lions.
Who?
Aleem McNeil is a very, very good
I know.
defensive lineman. But if you stack them up, but their stats amongst each other, one, Milton has hundreds, I think a couple hundred less snaps, and they're very close to identical stats. Milton Williams is a very underrated player in this defense when he was overshadowed by the rest of the stars that they had in recent years. So I think he will take that step. I really like him. And, Dylan bringing here, Ajomo is another player. He is
just sitting there. We got to step up too.
He was 21 years old last year. He is a young player. Let's see what he can bring you in year 2. Let's see if he can give you some quality reps and see what you can do there, because if that is the case, he's one heck of a steal because you got him in the 7th round.
Yes, you sure did.
But he's a super young player as well. And, I'm all for it. And hey, the draft's tomorrow. I can't wait. It'll be fun. I think there'll be a lot of excitement. Well, hopefully there's a lot of excitement. We'll see with who the Eagles pick, because that's all depending in terms of
whether or not you're excited or you want to punch babies.
No, I don't hit children. Well,
it's a saying. It's a saying.
I know it's a saying. I'm just kidding with you. But
I'm not punching any babies either.
Before we leave, I want to bring up this. I did post it to Instagram today. I want to, since it's the draft tomorrow, I am going to post this. All right. The best Eagles draft class of all time. So we have the 1973 Jerry Sizemore, Charlie Young, 2 very good Eagles players. The 1986 draft, the end of the draft, when you got Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons. 98, of course, you have Trey Thomas, Jeremiah Trotter, Ike Reese was in that draft. The 02 draft, when you had Michael Lewis, Sheldon Brown, Lito Shepherd, B. West. The 09, Macklin and McCoy. 2012, Fletcher Cox, Nick Foles, Vinnie Curry, Michael Kendricks. 2013, Lane Johnson, Zach Ertz. 2018, of course, we know that draft was Goddard, Mailata, Avonte Maddox, Josh Sweat. And the 2021 draft, which the main key pieces in that draft is, well, actually, there's 3 pretty good players in that draft. That was Devontae, Dickerson, Milton Williams. Chip, what would you say is the best?
So I'm going to go, I feel like I'm going to go against the grain here. And there are so many great individual players on here. And they kind of stacked them and it was great. But for me, I'm going to go with the 2012 draft. Because it got us Nick Foles and Fletcher Cox. And with the two of them come the only Super Bowl in Eagles history.
Yeah, listen, that draft wasn't terrible. You got those two guys, and of course Foles had to kind of run his course and come back around. Yeah, those are
for me.
For you. I get that. To me, I'm looking.
I like that T agrees with me. He says 12 or 13 with the Super Bowl ways, which it does.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know. The 2002, you got a few, Brian Westbrook is one of the best running backs in Eagles history. Sheldon and Lito were a tandem for so long they were so good. Michael Lewis was good for a few years. This is tough because
this is your graphic. I want to point that out.
Yes, I know it's my graphic. I know, but I don't know this. But then 2018, you have 4 players. Listen, that whole entire draft, there wasn't one. Yeah, I know Matt Pryor wasn't a great player. He's still in the league.
I like this.
He's still in the league. You know what? I'm going with 2018 because Dallas Goedert, Jordan Mailata got Mailata late.
And the fact that you got Mailata to turn into what he's become is impressive.
The reason that I'll say that one is you did not miss on any of those picks. You were 100% because listen, like I said, I know Matt Pryor wasn't a great player. He is still in the NFL to this day. There's not one player out of the league. Most of them are still with the Eagles still, which is great because you look that's 6 years ago and they're still on the Eagles. So
I think if you look at that draft and you say Mailata alone, I mean, you were not expecting him to be what he became.
No, when we started this podcast in 2020, you were going into year 3 of Mailata and he didn't do anything because he hadn't played because you had Jason Peters and
then behind him you had Andre Dillard who was going to step in
and you drafted Andre Dillard in 2019. The next year you drafted Andre Dillard in the first round. Listen, it's a hell of a draft, and to see all of these guys grow into very good players, they're all in a Super Bowl. They got you to the Super Bowl. You didn't win the Super Bowl. I understand that. Maybe if they would have won, that 2018 would definitely be superior from a lot of people.
I think so too.
But yeah, listen, T, he's been with us since the start. I remember all the commenting. I loved all the commenting, all the chatter back and forth. It was great. Like I said, great, some awesome comments. I'm not sure we're going to be streaming live during the draft. Dylan asked that a little earlier.
Johnny likes to savor the flavor of the draft.
Savor the flavor. That's it. That's an interesting one.
You do.
I do. I like to.
You've got your little spreadsheets and stuff.
I wouldn't say spreadsheets. I don't have that, but no, I
What about your notebooks?
What?
What about your little notebooks? Don't you keep notebooks of the draft?
No, but I do print out all the guides and I have all that. So I guess that's close enough.
Yeah.
But no, I like to just kind of relax. Maybe not sure yet. We may have somebody streaming going through the picks there. We may have that. I'm not sure. But the other thing about streaming, I think when you look at the draft and people are, going through the picks and stuff, of course you get what I like to do is I like to put the phone kind of away a little bit.
You're not surprised.
Because not surprised. Well,
or
I want to
not
be surprised
spoiled.
on the
Not
TV.
spoiled. Not spoiled.
Yeah, not spoiled. And if you do a live stream, I guess you can react to the picks even before they're made. I guess that's the main emphasis of it.
I will be watching our buddy Rio's reaction to their first pick. So our buddy Rio is a podcaster for the Washington Commanders, and he has been picking his favorite quarterback because they will be drafting a quarterback. There is no question at all about that will happen. But in previous years, he has been slightly angry by the Washington Commanders and who they selected.
Does he want Jaden Daniels?
he doesn't care actually between Daniels and May. He doesn't care.
Okay. Well,
As a Commanders fan wouldn't, because they like all their quarterbacks and they don't care who the quarterback actually is.
And I'm thinking I do one of these years want to get like a live show for like the first round of the draft somewhere. Definitely something that is on my mind in potentially future years. So definitely something. No, we're not. I'm not putting Dylan's comment. Yeah. Not anymore, at least.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Not that we know a lot more than we did years ago, but yeah, that's definitely a no-go. But yeah, I do want to do something potentially in the future, even if it's not day one, maybe try day two of the draft. That would definitely be fun to be able to, as it's live happening, to be able to do a live show. I think that would be more fun than doing a live stream as it going. That's just my opinion, but definitely something to keep an eye out for the future. Maybe something that we will try to work on and get done. But no, this was fun. Hopefully you guys are with us when we come back on. We are going to be on Saturday night to break down the whole Eagles draft. I didn't want to wait until next Wednesday. I wanted to kind of do it right after rounds 4 through 7, kind of make it fresh because, of course, we'll have the whole Eagles draft, some undrafted free agents that are signing. You'll be able to have all that kind of info and news. So we're not going to be on next Wednesday breaking the draft. We may be on next Wednesday talking about something else potentially that happens. But as of right now, we are going to be on this upcoming Saturday night to break down the whole entire Eagles draft. Did we like it? What didn't we like? And we may have a guest too. I may try to get Mike Bauer back on from Dynasty Rewind to have him kind of talk with us as well. But definitely should be fun. Hope to see everyone. I loved all the comments tonight.
Well,
definitely join us.
Thank you guys so much for the comments.
Yeah, definitely join us again on Saturday night. But also make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit all the notifications to make sure that when we go live, you get the notification. You can join us. You can watch. It's so much appreciated. But with that, we always end it with these two words. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.